Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to One Piece, episode 974. So, today, or last time rather, we saw the beginning of the public execution of Kozuki Oden. We saw he had to stand in this giant pot of boiling oil while holding above his head a plank carrying his scabbards, the 9 red scabbards. And that last part wasn't originally part of it. They were supposed to go in 2, but it was kind of a loophole, and Kaido was fine with it, so whatevs. But they have a deal. Oden managed to strike a deal with them. If he can last 1 hour in the boiling oil, they'll go free. The only problem is he's standing in boiling oil. Like, he that's not something you can just survive for an hour. And like, even One Piece, which has some ridiculous survival feats, it's like that's something that's a little more unbelievable. And especially when you see right beforehand this other dude fall in on accident, and you see his melting flesh as he crawls out and everything, and it's like, oh my god. One Piece gets dark at times. But yeah. So Oden's just kind of having to stay in there, while at the same time, Shinobu has kind of started to reveal herself. At first, she's just watching, but then someone starts calling him a silly lord, which she takes offense to. And so she gets involved and starts giving a speech and all, but doesn't really seem to be doing too much other than turning at least a few people around. Now, the thing is, we're going to see in this episode this week, I assume, the end of this scenario, because I don't think they could stretch out this entire challenge, I guess you could call it, too much longer. So I think we're going to see the end of Oden's trial here, and I don't think he's going to survive it. Because one, we know Oden was killed by public execution. We know that this is already fact. Because this is all in the past, so we know that he's gonna die here. And even if he somehow does survive, we know Orochi and Kaido are gonna kill him anyway. So I definitely think we're gonna see Oden's death in this episode. Which means all we have after this is maybe 1 or 2 episodes showing how it goes from that to the burning of Oden Castle and everything that leads up to the retainers being sent to the future by Toki. And it's going to be, it's probably going to be emotional, because honestly, I like Oden as a character. He's a fantastic, really likable character. He just is. And as I've said before, I think I said it last time, I think I said it a couple times in the last videos, but when I first started these flashbacks, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. I was not really entirely on board. I was worried that it was just going to take me out of the immersion of everything, because I was more interested in the current stuff. And since then, I had completely kind of turned around. I really have liked these flashbacks and all. And part of that is because of Oden. I've grown attached to his character because Oda makes me grow attached to all of the characters. It's just what he does in his writing. Um, I've grown attached to Oden. I've loved seeing his interactions with Whitebeard and Roger. I've liked seeing how he met Toki and just how he went from kind of a troublemaker to someone who truly cares about his country and wants to save it. It's honestly a great character arc that he's gone through. Just seeing how much he's changed and how much he's grown. And we're about to see the end of this. And pretty soon, we'll be getting back into the actual main current day stuff with Luffy and them. And it's almost going to kind of be sad to get back to the current stuff. But at the same time, there are some things I really am excited to see going forward. Because there's a couple things I am spoiled on, but don't know almost much of anything actually about within context. I just know like the very top details, I guess. I don't know. The very base details, let's put it that way. That's a good way to put it. I know the very base details, but nothing actually further than that. Like for example, I know of a character who's coming. I don't know anything about them, like other than like one thing about them, which is just how I know about the character in the first place. And that's pretty much it. I don't know like what their personality is like. I don't know like how they fight or anything, if they fight. I know what they look like. I know their name, and I know one very small detail about them, but only the detail itself and no actual details of that detail. You know? I hope I'm making sense. I hope you understand. But it's like I know the very basic stuff, but no further details than that. So I'm just excited to get to more of that stuff coming forward. In the meantime, though, we're just going to get on with this episode, hope for the best, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see what happens. So, that being said, let's just get going. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow a link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I was right, and I did get emotional. Kozuki Oden is dead. Killed in 2 different ways, by boiling in oil and by being shot in the head. And like I said in the reaction, he would have died as it is. Like he was on the verge of death already. We saw him literally fading. He wasn't going to survive much longer anyways, so the shot to the head was unnecessary, but I feel like it was just driving home the animosity we as viewers, fans, readers, however you take in this series, the animosity we should be feeling towards Kaido and Orochi. It was literally, it wasn't needed. So it just feels like it was just put in there by Oda in order to make us hate Orochi and Kaido that much more. Because it's basically overkill. And that's fine. I'm all good with that because, I mean, these characters, these villains are already honestly the most detestable in the series. Like that used to go to the likes of Arlong or Doflamingo, but honestly, like these two have very much overtaken that, especially Orochi. Like Kaido's not as actively bad so far that we've seen. He's definitely very bad. very bad. But Orochi is definitely more of the scumbag of the two. Like, he's just fucking horrible. So it's like, it's surprising to me because it's like for so long I looked at Arlong as like the pinnacle of just really fucking scumbag villains in this series because of what he did to Nami and everything. And not only what he did to Nami for so long, but the fact that he went back against his promise by having Nezumi steal her treasure that she was going to buy back Kokiyashi Village with. So, just all of that was so fucking scummy. The shit that Doflamingo did and everything to the kingdom, to King Riku, to Law was so fucking scummy. I mean, hell, Crocodile could even be thrown into there. The shit he's done, the shit he did to Vivi and Alabasta and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like this the shit we've seen that Orochi and Kaido have done to Wano, to Oden, to all of this. The smile fruit incident alone already overtakes everything else we've seen in this series and easily makes them the most detestable villains. Just that alone. But add everything else on top of that, and it's just. And again, I like this because villains who are this genuinely detestable, who we as viewers really hate this fucking much, I think this is how a lot of villains should be. Not all villains need to be this way, but a lot of villains, and a lot more villains in media, should be portrayed this way. As just irredeemable, scummy, horrible pieces of shit who have done the worst possible things you can imagine and are the worst possible people you can imagine. Not all villains need to have like some kind of sad backstory or need to have some kind of like believable, respectable reasoning for becoming bad guys. Not all of them need to have a lot of depth. Some of them can even have, like Orochi here, backstories that give them reason for what they're doing, but doesn't excuse it, like, even in the slightest, because it's such a stupid fucking reason. Nothing about what happened to the Kurzumi clan justifies any of this, even slightly. And yeah, it's like last week with last week's episode, I made the reference of Oden wouldn't be Oden unless it's boiled because throughout all of these flashbacks, Oden has been saying that, and he's sung it because it's been part of his song. And when he was acting silly, doing his naked dances and all in order to try and save everyone, that was how a lot of them ended, if not almost all of them. So we've been hearing that over and over again throughout this arc, throughout this act of the arc. And so it's already stuck in our heads. So when we find out Oden is going to be boiled in oil, it's just like, of course that's going to come to mind. Oda has literally been hammering it into our heads for so long now. So of course it's going to come to mind. But when I talked about it last week, I made a point of saying like on what that actually meant in terms of Kozuki Oden being killed this way. That this would fuel his legend, his legacy. That Oden truly became the Kozuki Oden that we know and see as this reverent figure in the current day because of how he went out. Not just being boiled in general, but all of the scenario around it. How he was holding up his retainers for the entire hour. How he refused to give in even as his feet were continuously slipping. How he continued to defy Orochi and Kaido while standing there, just by surviving for that time. The way he went out is what created this legendary figure. Nothing else about it. Nothing else about his life. Not the adventures he went on with Whitebeard and Roger, because most people don't know about that outside of the crew. That's not why he's this huge legendary figure. It's not because of any big special things he did in Wano, because honestly, he didn't. He never really had the opportunity to do as many big special things in Wano. It's not because of how the people revere him, because while a lot of people do, not everyone does, and it's very divisive in Wano currently regarding that. It's because of how he died. Oden isn't Oden unless it is boiled. Kozuki Oden became this legendary figure because he went out sending a message. And all these people who are here heard Shinobu's message. And that allowed them to be receptive to Oden's. And so by them finishing that line for him, and you saw him smile as he fell down into the oil, the last smile as he died. You know that that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted them to finish it. Because that was the point. He was sending a message. He was inspiring the future. And it's led to where things are in the current day. And I find it kind of just really cool, really badass, how we now have 3 characters, 3 really likable, 3 really well written, 3 just insanely awesome characters. We have 3 of them now who have died smiling. We have Yasu, we have Roger, and we have Oden. All 3 of them died smiling. And while Yasu couldn't really help it, unfortunately, you know, with how he was, even if he wasn't forced into an eternal smile, he still would have been. Because he accomplished what he needed and wanted to, and he left the future of Wano in good hands. And Roger died smiling because he was content. All the adventures they had gone on, discovering Laugh Tale, making so many wonderful friends, he was content in the end. And now Oden dies smiling, having lit a spark in the hearts of Wano and its people, knowing from just the fact that they finished his line for him, that one day the walls will fall and Wano will be open. All three of these just awesome, badass, just wonderful characters died smiling, knowing that the future was bright. And that's a big deal. Especially because of who these characters were. I mean, Roger and Oden, of course, being two massive figures, two massive legendary figures in this series. And Yasu, while maybe not being as big, his is more connected to who he was in this arc. His connection with his daughter, and his connection to Oden, as well as just the fact that he was a victim of the smile fruits. And that's the big way to look at it. You had the King of the Pirates. The overall goal of our main character of this series, the figure that set everything into motion. You have one of his crew members, a daimyo of the land of Wano, who was instrumental in so much of Roger's final journey. Who is an instrumental part of this arc. And then you have Yasu, who's not this big figure, but who's just a person, cursed by a fake devil fruit against his own desires, forced to suffer a never-ending smile and laugh because Orochi is a piece of shit. He's the everyday person in this scenario. The one we connect to the most. He may not be as big a figure as Roger or Oden, but that doesn't mean that he didn't leave as big a mark on this series. The only things I've ever heard people talking about, like on social media, about Yasu has always been positive. Always. Oda wrote another character that just everybody loves because he's just such a likable character. You just feel sorry for him. You just love his personality and his overall just positivity. You adore how great of a person and a father he is, and the way he goes out just makes you love him even more. So I'm just really happy that they're continuing to show these strong, badass characters dying with a smile on their face, because it matters. And we're seeing through every character that does die this way that it matters. And I really like that Oda's doing this. So now, like I said, all that's left is the aftermath. The retainers have run off They're going to try and protect Toki and Momonosuke and Hiyori. And we know what's going to happen. Kaido and Orochi's men will burn down Oden Castle. Toki will send Momonosuke with the retainers 20 years into the future. And Hiyori will stay behind with Kawamatsu to grow up to become the amazing person she is today. These flashbacks are almost over, and it's sad. But we should look at it as how good they've been, how instrumental they've been in fleshing out this story. And I mean, I should have known. I doubted it, and I shouldn't doubt Oda when it comes to these flashback sequences. They've always been good, and they've always been instrumental in just developing, building on this series that much more. Whether it's flashback sequences for a specific character, a scenario, whatever have you. Oda's never let us down. So, yeah, this was an emotional ending to Kozuki Oden's story. But his story's truly not over until Wano is free. Until Wano's borders can be open and Orochi and Kaido are taken down. And preferably taken out. At least Orochi. But preferably both. Once that happens, it'll finally and truly be over. I've had a lot to say on this episode. Without really talking about the actual episode much. But I feel like the episode itself, there wasn't much to it. It was mostly just a prolonged death. This episode, what it really did was focus on the meaning of everything. Giving that depth to the death. And that's what it needed to be. So I'm all good with it. Giving that meaning and everything, having the episode titled what it was, how it ended, how Oden went out. It all just worked. But I want to hear your thoughts as well. So tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of One Piece, and thank you so much for tuning in. So for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.